Now that we've talked about the claim of policy, problem solution, let's start looking at other aspects of Friedman's rhetorical strategies. So in the first paragraph here, what we have is we have some really great word choice going on. She has phrases and things such as transplant teams are desperate, right? That word desperate is wonderful. Improved survival rates coupled with steady expansion of indications for transplantation make the organ shortage progressively severe. I know I mentioned progressively severe earlier when she's trying to establish the problem, but especially the term severe, progressively severe, how it's just getting worse and worse. These are great word choices to get really the right image across, the right feeling of the desperation. As it says here, desperate, right? And then you have unbearably long. So instead of saying that wait times are now long, by saying they're unbearably long, she's bringing in that aspect of the recipient who is waiting. It's not just a long time in general, it's unbearably long for that person waiting for the organ. So these are all really great choices of words to show the severity of the problem, to really get people to emotionally respond to it and say, oh my gosh, this is really bad, right? So these word choices here in this first paragraph, really you could consider to be a use of pathos because it's playing on their emotions and their values and beliefs. So word choice, excellent in here. In the second paragraph, we also have some good word choice. We have the exploitation, right? That word is great. Nobody likes anyone to be exploited. So she knows that this is going to catch the attention of her audience and create a reaction in those people who really believe that everyone should be treated equally. And let's see, where's the other one? Organ brokers. It's in here somewhere. There it is, organ brokers. It's kind of an odd term, isn't it? To think about an organ broker, right? You're taking something that's really part of your body, it's a personal thing, and then it's made into such a cold transaction by calling it an organ broker. It's just going to catch people's attention there too. Now, something else that's important about this second paragraph here is her use of ethos. And I know it may seem strange, like a strange use of ethos, but it's here. When she says, limited studies indicate possible exploitation of these paid donors who may get minimal benefit for their program. Okay, so the limited studies indicate possible exploitation. That needs to be looked at because she's being very honest with her audience here. She's saying that we have limited studies, not that we have, definitive, decisive studies. She doesn't even just say studies. She didn't have to put limited. She could say studies indicate exploitation of these paid donors. She doesn't have to say possible exploitation because she's just saying that they indicate, right? So, but she's choosing to use these words limited and possible to show that she doesn't have all the information. However, that even though she's saying that I don't have all the information, but this is what I have and this is what it seems to be saying, it's right next to this picture here. So it really still gets that idea in the audience's mind that these people are being exploited. So even though she's being honest, she's still getting the point across she's trying to get across. She's still creating that pathos. She's still playing on their value for equitable treatment. Again, she says, more worrisome is the lack of knowledge about adverse outcomes they experience. So still she's saying we don't have all the information, but she's turning that because she says, because we don't have all this information, right? More worrisome is the lack of knowledge because we don't know how bad it could be. Obviously, places aren't going to report when they're treating people badly, right? So this is going to cause concern among her audience. So not only, again, is she being honest, but it's causing concern. So it's interesting because it's ethos and it's pathos all at the same time. She's double dipping. And you'll find that Friedman double dips a lot with some of the things that she talks about. Something else with this section here, this paragraph, is, as I said, I said some of these things were pathos. There's a lot of pathos going on here because she is trying to play on her audience. Remember, it's the medical community, and so they care about how people are treated, right? You go into the medical profession because you want to help people. So she's playing on that value that they have and their beliefs that people should be treated well, should be taken care of, and should have equitable treatment, regardless of their socioeconomic status. So you also have a whole lot of pathos going on in here. As we move down into this section, as I stated earlier when I talked about the fact that she's establishing the problem, and part of the problem is that there's not equitable treatment going on. I want to be a little more specific as we look through this section here. In this part, Friedman talks about how let's see, doctors will be paid for each transplantation, and other hospital staff, such as administrators and transplant coordinators, whose jobs depend on the volume, blah, 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 blah. So all of these people are going to get paid, right? And then she also says, transplant programs and their home institutions gain higher case volumes, which improves their reputation and gives them a competitive advantage. And so she's also saying, okay, the entire hospital benefits. Any hospital that does these transplants is going to benefit. The entire hospital, all of the medical community involved and revolving around that hospital will benefit from it. Who's her audience? Her audience is the medical community. So she is directly pointing her finger at her audience saying, you benefit. Every last one of you benefit in some way from these transplantations. So in a way, she's making them feel guilty, right? She's saying every time somebody donates their organ so that it can be transplanted, you benefit, but the donor of the organ does not. If you were in that audience, wouldn't you feel a little guilty? Wouldn't you feel like, oh my gosh, we should do something for this person? That's what she's trying to do, right? That's that emotion she's trying to elicit. And then why does she elicit that emotion? So that it would get them to want to act, right? That's the whole analysis part. She goes on to talk about how the taxpayers benefit. Here she also says that, let's see, the recipients benefit and so do their family members, right? So all of these people benefit except for the donor. And then she goes on to say not only does the donor not benefit, but as I said earlier, remember how they get no compensation for lost wages and they may have to pay travel costs to the place of transplantation. So she's saying how it is not fair. Then she says, so this is all obviously pathos, right? One last thing that she talks about on this first page is she's starting to establish a warrant. She's starting to establish this principle about why it's okay to pay people for their donations. So if you look here, she says, interestingly, the only non-psychologically derived donor benefit occurs if a previous donor needs a kidney transplant. The allocation regulations for organs from deceased donors give priority to candidates on the waiting list who have given whole or segments of organs. So what she's saying here is she's saying the one thing that these donors do get, these living donors get, is if for some reason they should need an organ, specifically a kidney transplant, right? If they should need an organ, they get placed to the top of the recipient list because they have already donated an organ in their life. So it bumps them to the top of that list, of the waiting list. Now, I don't know how many people actually who donate an organ later need an organ. I'm assuming it's probably a very small amount, but I don't know. But that's the only actual tangible benefit that's given. Because here it says tangible benefits, right? That's the only tangible benefit that the donor gets. But she uses this and she says, this represents a societal determination that an individual's act of donation is morally deserving of a tangible reward. And this is the warrant. This is where she's starting to develop her logos. She's going to start basing her logical argument on this bit right here, where she says, look, because we put them at the top of that recipient list, we as a society believe they deserve something for their donation, something beyond that psychological benefit. And because we already as a society believe this, let's take it a step further and actually pay them for it. So she's establishing this warrant saying, look, we already agree with this. We already believe they should get something for it, that they are morally deserving of tangible reward. And then she's going to take that tangible reward to then mean some sort of a payment.